Hello, and welcome to Life Diaries, a space where the pages of life open up, one story at a time. These are tales written by experience, spoken from the heart. Take a moment for yourself, and let's begin. Male friendship is a special facet of human connection, one that can only be grasped by those who have experienced its true power and inexplicable pull. For a real man, a comrade is sometimes more important than a blood brother or a close relative. Genuine bonds of camaraderie don't arise from nothing and aren't broken by trivial disagreements. That's why, once forged, they sometimes remain unbreakable throughout life, regardless of years or distance. That's the kind of comrade Leo became for Ethan, a youth a couple of years younger, who grew up in a troubled family. His parents often abused alcohol, leaving the boy and his two younger sisters without proper supervision. Eventually, the children were sent to the Sunny Ray Orphanage. However, it only took Leo a couple of weeks to escape from there. This short time was enough for the parents, forgetting about the children, to change their place of residence. Various rumors circulated in the town of Zarachensk about the reasons for their sudden move. Leo flatly refused to return to the Sunny Ray Orphanage. As soon as he turned 14, he decided to settle in the deserted parental home and start an independent life. The guys who had been friends with him almost since they were toddlers tried to help in any way they could. They brought warm clothes and food from home. For a long time, they tried to hide the fact of Leo's escape from the orphanage, but eventually, everything hidden came to light. The guardianship authorities returned the youth to the state institution again. Ethan then managed to plead with his parents to help his childhood friend. Ethan's father, a former military man, was able to find distant relatives willing to become the boy's guardians. And Ethan's mother, a lawyer by profession, helped with processing all the necessary paperwork. Since then, Ethan and Leo became not just friends, but the kind people talk about. Through fire and water for a friend. Ethan's parents, of course, weren't too happy about such a friend, but they didn't voice their concerns to their son. Ethan owed Leo his life. One day, they went to the Studenoy River. The ice on the river had already thawed significantly, but still seemed strong enough to hold a person. Taller and heavier, Ethan tried to avoid areas where water was already showing through. However, this didn't save him. The large guy in a heavy father's sheepskin coat and valenki instantly went under the ice. Fortunately, he managed to surface and grab the edge. His clothes quickly soaked through and began to drag him down, his legs cramping. Fortunately, Leo didn't lose his head. They say that in moments of mortal danger, a person's hidden abilities open up. Apparently, this was just such a moment. Thin and short, Leo grabbed Ethan by the collar of his sheepskin coat and pulled him up. Afterwards, he couldn't explain how he managed to pull out his tall friend in waterlogged clothes. Fear multiplied his strength tenfold, and he not only pulled out his comrade, but also dragged him several meters away from the ice hole. The guys collapsed onto the snow, exhausted, trying to catch their breath. When Leo looked up a few minutes later, he saw Ethan crying, smearing snow and blood from a scrape received during the fall across his face. "Ethan, what's wrong? Did you break something?" He, the boy, was shaking either from the cold or from what he had experienced. "What? A wound? It's just a scratch," Ethan croaked. "Don't whine. You're a guy. Managed to get into your dad's valenki, finally?" he continued. "Their dad's from the army. Some kind of trophy. He'll kill me." Leo replied, "He'll kill you. Stop whining. He won't kill you. We'll go to my place now. You need to dry off. Otherwise, he'll definitely kill both me and you. Yours don't like me much as it is, and then they'll forbid us from being friends altogether." "But how will I go with one Valenok?" At that moment, 12-year-old Ethan remarkably resembled a small, naive, helpless child. He pondered for a couple of minutes. In the end, he took off his own boots and gave them to his friend, wrapped his own foot in a scarf, and put Ethan's wet Valinok on his friend's foot. In the evening, after drying his clothes as much as possible, Ethan returned home. Aunt Martha, who had taken guardianship of Leo, guessed from the dirty tracks in the hallway that the boys had gotten into some trouble, but she didn't scold or investigate. She generally paid little attention to her nephew, believing that this way he would become independent and serious faster. And Ethan came down with severe pneumonia. However, he never admitted what caused it. This was one of their many shared secrets. His parents could never find out what had happened. About the missing Valinok, Leo said, "We tried to dry it on the stove, got carried away playing, didn't notice it burned." The story was implausible, but Ethan's parents had no choice but to believe it. Aunt Martha, who had taken guardianship of the boy, tried to provide him with shoes and clothes. She simply didn't have time to worry about his moral character, upbringing, or studies. Even the influence of good friends didn't help. At first, he simply stopped informing her where he was going or who he was spending time with. Then he started staying overnight at friends' places. To all her remarks, he would reply with the unchanging, "You're not my mother." The youth committed his first theft at 15. At this time, Ethan was diligently preparing for exams for the cadet school. The second theft was complicated by an assault on a guard, and Leo, along with his so-called friends, was sent to a correctional colony. Despite not participating in the assault himself, the other guys dragged him along, and he considered refusing to be cowardly. The friendship, which began in the sandbox and survived many trials, didn't end but moved to a different plane, one of memories and rare letters. Ethan continued to be interested in his friend's life and tell him about his own. Despite some letters coming from a military university and others from a correctional colony, the guys still found common topics for conversation. Perhaps that's the beauty of youth. During this time, we are capable of overlooking the insignificant and seeing only the good in people. Ethan's parents were wary of their son's communication with a guy of questionable reputation, but had long ago given him the freedom to choose his own friends. Ethan would later give the same freedom of choice to his children. He would give it and wouldn't regret it. A person either learns to take responsibility or learns to shift it onto others, later blaming everyone around for their life not working out. After the cadet school, Ethan entered a military university, then began to rapidly climb the career ladder. He married Sarah, and they had twins, a son, Adam, and a daughter, Emily. Life flowed in a calm channel. News from his old friend came less and less frequently until it stopped altogether. In his last letters, Leo had practically stopped talking about himself, only once casually mentioning that he was lucky enough to meet a real angel in his life. He didn't go into detail himself, and Ethan decided not to pry. Through his acquaintances, Ethan repeatedly found out that Leo was alive but serving another sentence. There had been many such sentences in his life. It seemed he had become so accustomed to this life that freedom no longer beckoned him. He didn't know how to settle down, how to earn a living, or even if there was any point in changing. There, behind bars, everything was familiar and known. Ethan's parents had passed away by that time, and Aunt Martha, who had taken Leo under her care, didn't live long either. Only old acquaintances remained in his hometown of Zarachensk, so Ethan rarely visited. Several times he considered selling his parents' apartment, but there were no buyers. Renting it out was also risky. There was no one to travel and look after the tenants, and the likelihood of encountering dishonest and unclean people was too high. However, unexpectedly, the class representative, Rebecca, decided to gather former classmates. And for once, Ethan had a short vacation at precisely this time. At the family council, it was decided to give the head of the family a couple of days of rest from worries and send him to his hometown of Zarachensk. At the same time, He planned to visit his parents' grave and drop by his homeroom teacher's place. Sarah didn't go with her husband, as she had urgent matters at the Flora flower shop. September 1st was approaching, which meant the demand for flowers would instantly increase. It was necessary to order the required popular items. At the train station, transferring to the commuter train to his hometown of Zarochensk, Ethan noticed an elderly man who struggled to get into the carriage and sat by the window. Something about his appearance seemed surprisingly familiar. Ethan sat in such a way as to keep the man in sight, observing without attracting attention. The old man seemed significantly younger than his years. Ethan himself was barely 40 at the time, the prime of life, as his wife said. They went to the gym together, loved outdoor activities. A healthy lifestyle and warm family relationships had a beneficial effect on their appearance. Even among colleagues, Ethan looked significantly younger than many. Most military personnel, having reached certain heights in their careers, stopped taking care of themselves, gained excess weight, and looked simply ridiculous during exercises, sweating profusely in the heat. Ethan always set an example of excellent physical fitness, easily completing forced marches by running or skiing. Sarah also often attracted men's attention with her toned figure and perfect appearance. Her husband didn't throw tantrums. On the contrary, he was proud that his wife was a dream and an ideal for many. Their children were often told that their parents looked like their older brother and sister. The man Ethan was watching closely looked over 60. Gray hair, sunken cheeks covered with stubble, a hunched back, and a terrible cough. Perhaps it was the cough that most betrayed the man's age. There were moments when he almost choked trying to clear his throat. Every half hour, he would go out to the vestibule, take a drag, hold his breath for a long time, and exhale clouds of foul-smelling smoke. Ethan, who couldn't stand the smell of tobacco and alcohol since childhood, recoiled every time he looked at this man. His father, who had never smoked a single cigarette or touched a glass of spirits in his entire life, had instilled a healthy lifestyle in him. At the same time, he was a model of integrity for Ethan. Apparently, this man hadn't been so lucky in life if he found joy in bad habits that were destroying his health and shortening his life. The strangest thing was that Ethan, who had an excellent memory for faces, couldn't recall this man at all. He had definitely never seen him before, but there was something subtly familiar about his appearance. The man returned from the vestibule after another smoke break, and unexpectedly, he and Ethan met eyes. Surprisingly, the man's eyes were young, though they were surrounded by a deep network of wrinkles. It seemed the thought that Ethan looked familiar also struck him, but his memory or Ethan's appearance was much better. Genuine joy flashed across his face, and in a rush, he took a few steps forward. Then, as if remembering something, his expression changed abruptly. He turned around and quickly went back to the vestibule, and from there, into the next carriage. For a few seconds, Ethan was in a daze, and then he almost ran to catch up with the man, not believing his eyes. Leo. It was Leo, his childhood friend, a daredevil, a hooligan, and a brawler. Leo, who had saved him when Ethan fell through the ice on the Studenoy River. Leo, who couldn't live in the state orphanage Sunny Ray, and then spent most of his life in prisons. Prematurely aged, hunched, thin, and sick. But it was him. Ethan had no doubt. Despite his completely changed appearance, he recognized the look in his old friend's eyes. Direct, slightly cheeky. Ethan practically ran through the next two carriages, examining the passengers as he went. At this time, the conductor announced a stop at Prebrezhnaya station, and Ethan saw through the window that Leo had gotten off the train and was walking quickly towards the village of Tiki. There was still about half an hour to go to his hometown of Zarochensk, but the man couldn't miss the chance to talk to his friend. So, without hesitation, He jumped off the train step and ran after the receding figure of his friend. "Leoy! Leo! Stop!" Ethan saw that his friend increased his pace upon hearing his name called out. Fortunately, the healthy, physically active Ethan ran fast, and so within a couple of minutes, he caught up with his friend and stopped in front of him, blocking his way. "Leo, you recognize me too. Why did you run?" "Man, go on, I don't know you." With these words, Leo tried to bypass Ethan. The smoky, hoarse voice resembled Leoy's, but Ethan already doubted. Had he made a mistake? Maybe he wanted so badly to believe that upon returning to his hometown of Zarachensk, he would meet his old friend, that he had mistaken some stranger who reminded him of Leo from afar. No longer so sure, he addressed the man again. "Leo, come on! I saw how happy you were to see me there, in the carriage. You couldn't not recognize me. Are you offended that I didn't write? But it's not my fault I didn't know your address. I wrote as much as I could, and then I tried to find out where you were, how you were. I've lived in the same place for many years. Is that what you're offended about?" "Man, I'm not a woman to be offended. You've mistaken me for someone else." The man began to look around, as if afraid they would be overheard, and then said more quietly, "Ethan, don't let anyone see you near me. Go away. Why do you need problems?" Ethan barely restrained himself from rushing to hug his old friend, despite the latter's warnings. "Leo, you old devil! But thank God! I thought I was losing my mind. How are you?" "Pretend you didn't hear the questions. Keep looking around," the man said. "Go to Prebrezhnaya station. The next commuter train is in an hour. You won't get home from here any other way. Are you going to your parents' place?" "No parents. They've been gone for 5 years. It's a pity. They were good people." "And who are you going to see?" "To them, to their grave. Decided to get together with the class. I'll be home if you need anything. Come by in the evening." "I'll come by." With these words, Leo walked on with a quick step, as much as his limp allowed, and Ethan went back to Prebrezhnaya station. What had happened seemed like a dream, or a very lucky coincidence. It was during his rare visit to his hometown of Zarachensk that he was fortunate enough to see a person whom fate had separated him from many years ago. School years, their friendship with this brave, desperate, and sometimes reckless guy flashed through his memory. How many things he came up with. How many times they got into scrapes because of him. How many times he brought home and fed his friend, who was hungry as a wolf cub, and the latter tried to take the best pieces with him for his sisters. Yes, Leo's life wasn't easy in his youth, and it seemed to have battered him severely later on. He looked like a real old man. Ethan remembered his 70-year-old father shortly before his death. Leo looked significantly older now. Waiting for the next commuter train, he arrived in his hometown of Zarachensk and first went to the Flora flower shop. If his friend came in the evening, he needed to be properly welcomed, just like back then, in childhood. He remembered that there was a meeting with school friends today, but he decided it could wait. Leo was more important to him. Besides, his behavior had worried the man. Calling the class representative, Rebecca, he warned her not to expect him at the meeting. Unforeseen important matters had arisen. The woman was noticeably upset. It seemed that the whole meeting had been organized specifically for him. Ethan even remembered that she had shown him attention in school. She was an exemplary girl who had matured early, and he was still naive about relationships with the opposite sex back then. Only a military career was on his mind. Although, when he met Sarah, he decided that this girl would someday become his wife. In the evening, there was a quiet knock on the door, and almost immediately the door opened, and Leo entered. "Still haven't learned to lock the doors, just like your parents." Leo smiled, and for a moment, he was again the way Ethan remembered him, and they hadn't seen each other for almost a quarter of a century. "Yes, That's my habit. My wife constantly scolds me. Less so now, she's used to it. I've been married for a long time. Tell me about yourself. I'll tell you. Come in. I've set the table for our unexpected meeting. Remember how you used to try to feed me all the time? You couldn't accept that I was thin and small, and you were healthy, even though you were younger than me? Leo smiled again, remembering their carefree childhood. I remember. It's unclear who I took after. My parents were thin, but I grew like a weed. Only in the cadet school did I discipline myself, started eating less, and spent more time on sports. By the military university, I was already well-built and fit. My children are thin too. Apparently, I took after the neighbor. Remember, there was an old man in our yard, fat? If your parents heard you, you always blurt things out without thinking. The friends spent half the evening reminiscing and talking. Ethan noted that Leo immediately pounced on the bottle, which Ethan, a non-drinker himself, had brought simply symbolically. Under the influence of alcohol, Leo became more relaxed, even rough, although it was clear he was trying to control himself. At the beginning of the evening, he either avoided questions about his life or answered evasively. After drinking, his tongue loosened, and he told Ethan the sad story of his life. Listen to this. You have a wife, children, a career, and I have nothing to tell. Only how I changed prisons and committed crimes. The only thing I can be proud of is that I never harmed a single living creature, didn't even touch animals with a finger. And the thefts? Who among us hasn't committed them? Not everyone got caught. And you know about my first stretches, when I was young, foolish. It was hard, scary in prison back then. I wanted to be free, with friends, adventures, fun. Only that fun led me back behind bars again. And life there is not sweet at all. I won't tell you everything. You don't need to know. Only once, a cellmate of mine received a letter from his sister, and it had her photo. She was 22, I was 25. You wouldn't believe how many girls I'd had, but this one wounded me right in the heart. I asked permission to write, and believe it or not, she replied. We started corresponding. I even started behaving excellently, eager to get out to her. I got out, came to her town, and her parents threw me out the door. They didn't know about our correspondence. I spent a month at their doorstep, pleading, convincing. I even got a job to prove I had changed, but they wouldn't budge. In short, I backed off a little, decided to give them time. I started living a normal life. That was probably the best year of my entire life. I got a job as a loader. I had money. I spent it all on her, bought her gifts. She refused to take them though, but I had the motivation to work, to live a normal life. Her parents only relaxed their vigilance 6 months after I arrived, and we started meeting secretly. But everything secret becomes known sooner or later. Mary got pregnant. Her parents found out. An abortion was impossible, the term was already long, and her health was poor. In short, they filed a complaint against me, and I went back to the zone. And Mary soon gave birth to my daughter. I have nothing. I haven't seen my daughter even once. She's almost 15. She doesn't even know my name or who I am at all. Mary's parents strictly forbade their daughter from telling the girl anything about me. Became friends? Yeah, right. When he found out I was planning to go see her after prison, he ambushed me with his buddies and marked me. Who needs a relative like that? She's smart, beautiful, just graduated from university. The fact that she replied to my letter back then was nothing short of a miracle. Anyway, my daughter grew up without me, and I could never fix my life. I just kept drifting, changing zones. Until one day I received a letter from Mary. She wrote that she was very ill. I lost it, honestly. I had 5 years left on my sentence, and the doctors gave her no more than a year. Do you understand? My Mary, my beloved, I never loved anyone else after her. I had no one after her. They all seemed the same, brainless, empty. So I ran away. I ran away to see Mary before it was too late. That's why I got scared when I saw you. Nobody here remembers me anymore, and if they do, they probably wouldn't recognize me. Life has been hard on me. But it's okay. At least I'll live the last few years in freedom. Even if they look for me, I won't surrender alive. I thought I'd lie low and then figure out how to live next. After that, I went straight to Mary. She lived nearby. I made it. Ethan saw how difficult the story was for Leo. I made it. I went to the hospital to see her for a whole week. Her parents didn't forbid it anymore. They were old, and I wouldn't have harmed her anyway. But they wouldn't let me near my daughter. They only let me see her from a distance, and they didn't tell her who I was. Mary passed away. Yes, she burned out like a candle. And soon both her parents did too. Yes, her mother only survived her by a week, her heart couldn't take it, and her father by 2. And who is your daughter with now? That's the thing, friend. My daughter is left alone. She's facing the orphanage. Help me, I'm asking as a friend. How can I help? I'm nobody to her. Take her under guardianship. Come up with something. Your parents, remember, they bailed me out, they didn't abandon me. But they found relatives. And does your daughter have anyone besides you? And an uncle? I can't. And the uncle drinks. He hasn't been able to live normally since he got out of prison. They won't give the child to him. I can look for relatives who can become her guardians. Friend, I'll be indebted to you for the rest of my life. Ask for anything. Just don't let her end up in the orphanage. The rest of the evening, the men spent talking about children and how to help the girl. Leo, weakened and exhausted, quickly got drunk and fell asleep. But Ethan stayed awake for a long time, thinking things over and recalling the events of the day. Besides the issue with the girl, he had to figure out how to tell his wife and children everything. How they would react, if they would understand him, if they would judge him for having such a friend. In the end, the man concluded that it was best for them to know nothing. He could gather information without informing them. However, he had to act quickly. In the morning, he called everyone who could help in any way. Different options were offered, even taking the girl under his own guardianship. This option seemed the most sensible to him. A 15-year-old girl is practically an adult. In a couple of years, she will be completely independent. He and his wife would look after her. She would meet her father. In short, Ethan decided to pursue this direction. Ethan didn't voice his plans to Leo yet. He promised to help, left him some money for the first while, and allowed him to stay in his parents' apartment. It had been empty for many years anyway. As for himself, it was time to go home. How was the meeting with your classmates? Sarah greeted him as if he hadn't been away for a couple of days, but for a year. Oh, it was fine. Everyone's older, put on weight, become uninteresting. Not much to talk about with anyone. Ethan lied. The feeling was disgusting. He didn't lie to his wife. He just thought it was better not to say anything. Why lie to the face of someone so close? Not with anyone at all. What about your friend you told me about, Leo, was it? We didn't go to school with him. He's older than me. Didn't you see him either? No. Ethan lied again. His wife was surprised that her husband returned thoughtful, quiet, and monosyllabic. He often went out to talk on the phone on the landing, constantly receiving messages. He answered all questions with single words. Like any woman, she decided that he had met some old flame on this trip. Old feelings had flared up, and now he was suffering, walking around like this. She didn't want to think about the fact that he had left home more than 25 years ago and had barely been back since. Finding the most obvious reason, in her opinion, she didn't consider other possibilities. And things with Chloe's guardianship were going well. Ethan managed to arrange a delay in sending her to the Sunny Ray orphanage, but he needed to urgently go to the guardianship department and bring documents. He told Sarah he was being sent on a business trip. However, she found train tickets to the same town he had recently visited for the reunion. The puzzle pieces fit together, and the woman was finally convinced. Her husband had someone else. And the next day, she saw him at the Flora flower shop. He was buying clothes, warm teenage clothes. Who could he be buying them for? Their daughter Emily's size was significantly larger. It turned out that he not only had an old love somewhere, but also a child. Sarah couldn't bear such betrayal. Her first impulse was to go up to her husband and find out everything. Later, she would regret many times that she didn't do that, because then she would have saved herself from suffering, uncertainty, and the unknown. But all that would come later. For now, she said nothing to her husband, returned home, and waited for him to return with explanations. However, as it turned out, patience and humility had never been her strong suits. So she decided to find out everything herself. Following her husband, she noted both the train number and the destination, so she bought a ticket for the same train. To be honest, she regretted giving in to the impulse as soon as she was in the entrance hall, but it was too late to turn back. She called the children and warned them that she and their father would be away for a couple of days. Her more perceptive son, Adam, understood from his mother's voice that something was wrong. "Mom, is everything okay? You never went anywhere without us." "Dad has a business trip, and I decided to go with him so I wouldn't be bored. I had some time off saved up at work." Her son pretended to believe her, but his mother's explanation worried him even more. Ethan, unaware that his poor cover story and his wife's imagination could threaten the existence of their family, anxiously pondered his next steps. The best solution would have been for Leo to surrender and then for Ethan himself to adopt Chloe. However, Leo firmly stated that he would not return to prison. Ethan didn't press him, deciding to return to this conversation later. It never occurred to him then how drastically his life would change. For now, he was simply going to meet the girl, Chloe, his friend's daughter, who didn't even know who her father really was. Her grandfather and grandmother, who had reluctantly allowed Leo to spend his last week with Mary, strictly forbade him from seeing his daughter. And Chloe was brought to her mother in such a way that she wouldn't cross paths with her father. Ethan used all his connections and contacts, of which there weren't that many. Since the girl was quite old, he was allowed to become her guardian. However, she could still end up in the Sunny Ray orphanage at any moment. All the property of her grandfather, grandmother, and mother would pass to her, but she could only formalize the necessary documents after reaching the age of majority. Currently, she continued to attend school number 10, but social workers came to look after her. As he was informed, the girl was very independent, quiet, and modest, like her mother and maternal grandparents, explained his acquaintance Rebecca, who was helping Ethan with the paperwork. "And do you know who the father is?" "I know, an old friend of mine. He wrote me a letter, asked for help." "And why doesn't he formalize the documents himself?" "He's in prison." Ethan didn't lie about the kind of person the girl's father was, but he didn't say that Leo had also run away. "Wonderful, Ethan. Where did such a friend come from in your crystal-clear biography?" "In childhood, we don't choose friends. We just are friends. And then such bonds appear that you can't break them. Besides, I owe him my life. Could I really refuse him such a request?" "Oh, that honesty and integrity of yours will get you into trouble someday. What did your wife say about all this?" "She's not against it. She doesn't know," Ethan admitted honestly. "And honestly, I don't even know how I'm going to tell her everything." "Ethan, are you serious? You're taking guardianship of an adult girl who doesn't know you or her father, and recently lost all her relatives. And you haven't even talked to your wife and children. Where will you bring her? Where will she live? What will she wear? How will the school issue be resolved? Connections are good, of course, but I can't cover for you indefinitely. My good advice to you? Talk to your wife and tell her everything. Otherwise, you risk changing your life drastically, and it's not certain it will be for the better. The acquaintance who was helping with the paperwork was the same class representative, Rebecca. Communication with her was a little burdensome for the man, as she was subtly hinting at a closer relationship. Therefore, her concern for his family didn't seem sincere, rather the opposite. But there was common sense in her words. Secrets and hidden matters from his wife could destroy their ideal marriage. After this conversation, Ethan truly wanted to talk to his wife, but that evening, Leo called to find out how things were progressing. During the conversation, he coughed terribly. Ethan didn't like this cough and directly asked his friend about his health. "It's bad, Ethan. That's why I bolted. The doctor there only gave me a couple of months. And there I also found out about Mary's illness. Everything just came together. In short, I'll be following Mary soon. Thank God I met you then. Through fire. And now I can die in peace, knowing you won't abandon my daughter." After these words, Leo coughed heavily again, and Ethan understood. He needed to go see his friend urgently, otherwise he might not get there in time to find him alive. Leo had strictly forbidden him from contacting doctors. Ethan arrived a couple of days later. He didn't tell his wife. Just then, his acquaintance Rebecca also informed him that the guardianship documents were ready, and he could take the girl home. Only she didn't have any warm clothes. She had grown over the summer, and her bones weren't small anymore. The next day, Ethan bought everything necessary and drove to his hometown of Zarochensk. He didn't know then that his wife Sarah was traveling with him on the same train and saw the situation completely differently. In the evening, he and Leo discussed what to do next. "Leo, have you even seen your daughter? Talked to her?" "No, and there's no point. Here's what I've come up with these past few days. Let's tell her you're her father." "Right, and mine will throw me out of the house, and nobody will believe it. I lived very far away when she was born. I finished my studies, got my first assignment. The kids were just starting kindergarten. But nobody will believe that I could have been cheating on my wife at that time. And I don't want to take a child into the family and start with a lie. It's better to say I'm a very distant relative of hers. It's also a lie, but at least it won't threaten my family. We'll figure something out." "No, we won't figure anything out ourselves. I'll pick her up tomorrow. Bring her here. You'll talk to her and tell her everything yourself." "No." "Why not?" Ethan sincerely didn't understand why his friend was so resistant. After all, he had loved the girl's mother. He would love her too, but circumstances hadn't allowed it. "Because, look at yourself and look at me. What kind of father would you want? A handsome and fit officer or a sick, dying ex-con? You're silent?" "That's right, and I don't want her to have a father like that." "Leo, it would never occur to me to be ashamed of my parents. Because you got parents like that. And I've been ashamed since I was a child. Always drunk, dirty, they abandoned me and my sisters. Even though I lived with Aunt Martha, I still went down the wrong path. And there's nothing to say about my sisters. They couldn't make a life for themselves." Ethan didn't ask what Leo meant when he spoke of his sisters. He himself barely remembered them. The girls were no more than 5 when they were taken to the Sunny Ray orphanage, and they never returned home. Leo visited them several times but always came back looking like a thundercloud. Life in the orphanage was never sweet, and even less so for 2 little girls. "Leo, she didn't have a father. I was told she's a quiet and modest girl. Tell her the truth. Don't hide it. It will be easier for you." At this moment, there was a knock on the door, and both men jumped up from their seats as if on command. 2 hours earlier, Sarah, following her husband, had gotten off the train at the station. Since she didn't know where he was going, she decided not to lose sight of him. He transferred to a commuter train, and she settled behind him, guessing that he was going to his hometown of Zarochensk. She had never visited her in-laws, so she was afraid of getting lost in an unfamiliar town. It seemed her husband was so deeply immersed in his own thoughts that he paid no attention to anything around him. A couple of times he almost noticed his wife, his indifferent gaze sweeping over her. He seemed to have dimmed in a few days, turning from cheerful and lively into thoughtful and gloomy. Seeing her husband enter the entrance hall of one of the buildings again, and then the apartment on the second floor, Sarah decided to sit on a bench and think. She needed to calm down, collect her thoughts, and decide how to start the conversation and explain her presence in her husband's hometown. After sitting for about half an hour, Sarah decided to go up to the apartment and talk to her husband. After all, sitting here, she wouldn't find anything out. If he was there with a woman, then so be it. They would divorce. Sarah loved her husband, but she would never agree to share him with anyone. The woman never thought that climbing a couple of dozen steps would be such a difficult task for her. Her legs completely refused to obey. Her hands became cold as ice, and her temples began to throb. Gathering her strength, she raised her hand and knocked. Muffled voices were heard in the apartment, which fell silent after her knock. "Leo, it's me." Ethan and Leo got up as if on command, exchanged silent glances, trying to understand who could be knocking on an apartment that had been empty for many years. "Are you expecting someone?" Ethan asked quietly. "Are you out of your mind? I didn't even tell anyone where I was going. I've been covering my tracks for several months, taking one direction, then another. I traveled by commuter trains, buses, so they wouldn't track where I was going. In the end, I didn't show my face out of that apartment. Maybe it's someone for you. That class representative Rebecca of yours, who won't leave you alone? Or one of the neighbors?" "Well, maybe, although I haven't really talked to anyone and asked them to call before coming. You hide, and I'll open it. If it's for me, I'll jump off the balcony." "Where are you going? You can barely walk." "Sit still, don't move." If it were the police, they probably wouldn't be so polite, knocking on the door and waiting for an answer. Leo, of course, decided it was the police coming for him. Rushing to the balcony, he began to calculate if he could run after jumping from the second floor. Ethan, realizing what his friend was about to do, silently grabbed him and shoved him into the room that had once been his parents' bedroom. It locked from the inside, and the windows faced a quiet courtyard. "Sit quietly and don't do anything stupid. Maybe some neighbor saw me." "I'm not going back to the zone, Ethan. Better they take me down during the arrest, but I'm not going back there." "Sit quietly. Maybe you'll get lucky." Ethan quietly closed the door and went to the front door. The peephole didn't allow him to make out the figures at the door, but it was clear it wasn't the police, and they weren't there for Leoy. Imagine his surprise when, opening the door, he found Sarah, his wife, on the threshold, who had lied so shamelessly about a business trip yesterday, and from whom he had been hiding the fact that another child would soon appear in their home for several days. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" "I wanted to ask you the same question. Did you also go on a business trip?" "I did go." Seeing his wife's eyes, Ethan realized he couldn't and didn't want to lie to her anymore. "Come in, I'll tell you everything now, and you can decide for yourself." Letting his wife into the house and closing the door behind her, he went to the room and knocked on the bedroom door. "Leo, come out. It's for me." "Leo, yes, my childhood friend. I told you about him," Ethan said, indicating his friend coming out of the room. It was noticeable that Sarah was surprised by her friend's appearance. "You said he was older than you, but I didn't think he was old enough to be your father." "Hello, Sarah. I'm only 2 years older. Life has just been very hard." "Sarah, sit down. I'll tell you everything now. Let me just make you some tea. You're completely frozen." Only now did Sarah notice that she was shivering and her hands still hadn't warmed up. Perhaps she hadn't expected to sit in the cold for half an hour in light clothing. For the next hour, Ethan and Leo took turns telling her about the circumstances that had brought them together in this apartment today. Sarah listened and couldn't believe her ears. On the one hand, she was glad that her fears about a mistress were unfounded, but on the other hand, she was surprised that her husband had made such an important and responsible decision without informing her. She also honestly told them about her fears and thoughts about a mistress. Now that the reason for her husband's mysterious behavior was known, the woman even felt a little awkward about her doubts. So, my dear, we now have an important decision to make: to take another child into our family. You've already made that decision. We need to decide how to tell the girl who we are and who her real father is. By the way, you haven't called her by name even once. I didn't know it, Leo said. I was forbidden to even mention her name so as not to upset Mary, and she barely spoke because of the medication and hardly recognized me. I know, I was given all her details. I just wanted to introduce her to you tomorrow. Well, the girl's name is Chloe. All the emotions that overwhelmed Leo at that moment were reflected in his eyes. It had been a long time since Ethan had seen men cry. The tough military men, his friends and colleagues, didn't allow themselves such weakness. His father also considered tears a disgrace for a man his whole life. Leo looked at his friend with eyes full of tears and couldn't hold them back. Maisie, his dear and beloved, his only beloved, had given their daughter his name. Leo couldn't control his emotions for a long time. Sarah even had to rummage through her purse and find a sedative pill, under the influence of which he quickly fell asleep. And she and her husband had a long and serious conversation ahead of them. The woman didn't want arguments, quarrels, or scandals. She understood that her husband couldn't have acted otherwise, but his secrecy hurt her. He had been silent for so many days, deciding something, coming up with things, although he had never allowed himself secrets from his wife before. The only exception was his work. Sarah knew absolutely nothing about it and never showed any interest. Otherwise, they had no secrets from each other. Over their many years of marriage, they had managed to maintain a wonderful relationship. They met when he was still a cadet at the cadet school. Handsome, tall, athletic. Many girls were attracted to him, but he chose Sarah. She attended school number 10 next to his school. Girls from her class often ran to dances at nearby community centers hoping to meet a handsome cadet. But she wasn't interested in military boys at all, and she didn't consider herself old enough for dates with boys. Ethan noticed her when she was walking along the embankment with her friends. He singled her out then for her modest appearance. Of all the girls, only she had long hair and a modest dress. However, approaching her proved to be not the easiest task. He even volunteered to paint the famous red stripes on the monument. That's how the cadets celebrated their graduation every year. They didn't dare entrust this responsible task to just anyone. Only the most desperate took it on. Ethan, however, was one of the proper ones who were never allowed to do such things. But he wanted to surprise the girl he liked with something, and so he volunteered himself. When he entered the military university after graduating from the school, the girl mustered the courage and went to study in the same city. Her parents supported her decision and never regretted allowing their daughter to enter a pedagogical college after the 9th grade, after which she went to a university located near the institute Ethan had entered. The young people decided to get married in their 2nd year. Everyone told them then that such early marriages often end in separation, but they loved each other so much that they simply ignored such predictions. A year later, twins were born into the young family: a son, Adam, and a daughter, Emily. That's when Sarah fully realized how successful her choice of life partner had been. Her husband, despite being at work and studying all day, tried to let his wife sleep at night, getting up with the children, changing diapers. He even learned to prepare formula in a half-asleep state. Contrary to popular belief, maternity leave not only didn't test their relationship, it strengthened their union. Sarah studied by correspondence, planned to send the children to kindergarten and go back to work. Ethan suggested she learn some work for pleasure. His career involved periodic moves, changing garrisons and military units. He managed to get a very successful assignment in a large city near the capital. Sarah, with her pedagogical education, initially got a job at the local school number 10, but she couldn't stand the complete lack of free time, the workload, the constant complaints from superiors and parents. That's when those courses for pleasure she had taken came in handy. She found herself in floristry and flower growing. First, she grew a beautiful flower garden at home, and then she learned to arrange bouquets, wrap gifts, and 2 years later, she opened a small flower shop, Flora. Ethan was fortunate to stay at the same duty station for a long time. His wife's business slowly but surely moved uphill. She was able to open 2 more stores and expanded the assortment. At first, only her husband helped and supported her, and then the children did. By 40, Sarah, to the envy of her friends, looked great. She had a beloved and loving husband, wonderful children. Her son Adam decided to follow in his father's footsteps, and her daughter Emily studied design. Overall, her life seemed ideal until recently. Her friends were openly envious, her subordinates never tired of praising and thanking her, and her children delighted her with their successes. And now their marriage was facing a serious test. The woman was glad that her fears and doubts about his fidelity were not confirmed, but the fact that he was willing to change their lives so drastically was disheartening. She truly didn't understand how they would live from now on. In essence, young Chloe was a complete stranger to them, and if her husband hadn't agreed to help his old friend, she would have remained a strange girl to them. Now they were taking responsibility for another child with her own character, interests, and on top of that, who had recently lost all her relatives. Sarah also believed that the girl had the right to know her real father, and she and her husband decided to try again tomorrow to persuade Leo to tell his daughter everything. Fortunately, the issue of finances didn't arise. The adult children were already partially financially independent. Their parents only gave them money for large purchases. Otherwise, both son Adam and daughter Emily were independent. Sarah tried not to think yet about how they would react to the new family member. Ethan didn't try to justify himself or come up with other ways out of the situation. "My dear, I couldn't have done otherwise. He has no one but me. It turns out the girl doesn't either. I didn't tell you because I didn't fully understand what I was getting into myself. Have you not realized in all these years of marriage that I'm with you in any situation, good or bad? But now it's not just about you and me. It's about a girl who doesn't know us at all. It's about our children, who will now have to accept and love a girl they don't know at all. Not to mention that Chloe might be against moving in with us. She's an adult. She makes such decisions herself. By the way, how is she herself? Is she ready for a new family?" My acquaintance Rebecca, who helped me gather the guardianship documents, said the girl is in a state of shock but isn't against moving. As far as I understand, she's quite withdrawn, quiet. It's still unknown whether that's good or bad. Sometimes it's very difficult to reach an agreement with quiet people. We'll manage, I'm sure. You have no idea how often I thank fate for a wife like you. You chose me yourself, Sarah said with a smile. It's late now. We need to try to get a couple of hours of sleep. Tomorrow is a difficult day, plus the journey home. By the way, what about Leo? He's very ill. He needs to be in the hospital. The police are looking for him. We can't even call an ambulance. Wanted posters have already appeared around town. Recidivist, criminal, and he's just a sick, life-beaten, unhappy person who doesn't have much time left. I honestly don't know what to do with him. I'm not a little child to worry about. Leo entered unexpectedly, as if he had been standing behind the door for a long time. Nevertheless, Sarah is right. You need help. You've already helped me, and you don't owe me anything more. You repaid me long ago for pulling you out of the ice hole back then. And you didn't owe me anything, you would have gone in after me too if I had fallen. So tomorrow we'll say goodbye. I'll be there. I'll write. Well, if not, don't remember me badly. Ethan and Sarah exchanged glances, understanding that arguing was pointless. Indeed, he was capable of deciding how to live his life. But Ethan felt uneasy. Leo, are you sure you shouldn't tell her? You could tell her. Just avoid the topic of prison. Say you're very ill. That's why you can't pick her up yourself. No, I don't want to. And to lie? Better not to say anything at all. It was clear the man was hesitant, but Ethan didn't push him. The decision, in any case, was his. The next morning, leaving Leo in Ethan's parents' apartment, Ethan and Sarah went to the Sunny Ray Orphanage to pick up Chloe. She had been there for several days, as the period for guardians to collect documents had dragged on a bit, and the guardianship staff couldn't leave her alone in the apartment without adult supervision any longer. While they were sorting out the bureaucratic matters, a short, thin girl quietly entered the room. She looked about 10 or 12 years old. She didn't resemble an adult 15-year-old teenager at all. Her long, light brown hair was braided. Ethan recognized his friend's features at first glance. The same eyes, build, hair color. Only Leo's gaze was cheerful, slightly cheeky, while Chloe's was sad and thoughtful. She quietly greeted them, asked if she could go home to pack her things. Apparently, she had already been informed that she would be living in another city. The girl barely looked up at Ethan and Sarah. The child psychologist who had worked with her after she arrived at the orphanage said that her behavior was just the beginning. The realization of loneliness and the loss of loved ones would come later, and it was difficult to predict how she would behave. Having settled all the formalities, the couple ordered a taxi to take Chloe to her apartment to pack her things. The departure was planned for late evening, so Sarah suggested Chloe visit her friends to say goodbye. I don't have friends, the girl said quietly. No one to say goodbye to. Not at all. Yes, I had some in elementary school, but then my grandmother enrolled me in music and art school, ballet, and with several tutors. There was no time left for friends, so they decided it wasn't interesting to be friends with me. What a good girl you are! You dance, you play, and you study. Yes, I guess, the girl said in a colorless voice. It seemed that her activities didn't make her happy at all, and she didn't feel any pride. At home, she packed photos, a few personal belongings of hers, her mother's and her grandparents', and clothes. Sarah was surprised that the girl walked past the shelf with numerous medals, cups, and diplomas several times without even glancing at them, as if she considered them completely insignificant junk that had no place in her small suitcase. Chloe, if you can't fit everything now, we can come back soon to get the rest. I know the way now. I can take you. It's not necessary. I'll try to take only the essentials. The girl paused for a moment and added, I've never been called anything other than Daria. If you like, I'll call you that too. You didn't like it when I called you Daria? I don't know. It feels unusual. And do you have children? The girl showed interest in those who were about to become her family for the first time. Yes, we have adult children, a son Adam and a daughter Emily, twins. They are 20 years old now. Our son will be a military man, like his father and grandfather, and our daughter chose a fashionable field, design. She loved to draw very much, just like you. She went to art school. She had talent for it from a very young age. I didn't have talent. My grandfather and grandmother just wanted to load me up like a workhorse. I never liked drawing or dancing. I'm not a fan of showing myself in public at all. I'd rather sit quietly in a corner where no one will bother me. I always asked my mom to have a little brother or sister for me. How wonderful it must be to have a brother or sister. especially from birth. You are born with your best friend right away. But I wouldn't say they became best friends from birth, Sarah laughed. Rather, they were born with a partner for mischief and a partner for fights. That's what I meant. I always wanted a big family. But my mom was her parents' only daughter, and I am hers too. And do you know anything about your father? Sarah asked cautiously. Yes, a little. To be honest, Mom told me secretly from Grandpa and Grandma that he was a good person. He just got into bad circumstances. He loved her, and she believed that her whole life, and said that he loved me too, even though he couldn't see me. Did she tell you anything else? Only that his name is also Leo. Would you like to meet him? Of course. Honestly, I hoped your husband was my father until I learned his name. At this moment, Ethan entered the room. Seeing him, the girl returned to packing her things. Chloe, we'll leave you to it, we won't bother you. Get ready, Sarah said to the girl, then took her husband's arm and led him to the kitchen, quietly closing the door behind them. Ethan, she knows. Both about her father and his name. You came at the wrong time. Maybe she would have told me something else. The girl is withdrawn, of course. We can't hide from her that her father is alive and nearby. What if he passes away and she never even sees him? I completely agree with you. But what about Leo? Listen, we are the ones who will raise and educate this girl. We need to think about what's best for her. That's why, as a guardian, I've decided to introduce her to her father. But since my general has decided, why should I argue? Ethan smiled, hugging his wife. An hour later, they were climbing the stairs to Ethan's parents' apartment. A taxi loaded with several suitcases, which Sarah had helped Chloe pack, was waiting for them at the entrance. She had packed everything that could help the girl adapt to a new place. The girl didn't ask why they had stopped here. It seemed she was under the influence of sedatives. As the psychologist explained, her psyche had indeed shut off from the outside world to make it easier to cope with the loss. Opening it up and pulling her out of this shell would take a long time and require care. Approaching the door, Ethan opened it and asked Sarah and Chloe to come in a little later, when he called them. Closing the door behind him, Ethan was surprised by how quiet the apartment was, as if no one was in it. Going into the kitchen and room, he found Leo sleeping, lying face to the wall. Leo, why are you lying down during the day? The man said quietly and gently touched his friend's shoulder. He didn't respond, so Ethan decided to shake him harder and tried to turn him onto his back. However, this was difficult to do. His friend seemed to have curled up into a taut ball. At this moment, Ethan understood what was wrong. Taking Leo's hand, he tried to find a pulse without much hope. Although, by how cold the hand was, it was clear. His friend had quietly passed away in his sleep. Most likely, several hours ago, he had already stiffened. He couldn't let his wife and Chloe see this, so he quickly got up and went out onto the landing to them. From her husband's look, Sarah understood. Something bad had happened. Meeting his wife's eyes, Ethan shook his head, explaining everything without words. Chloe, I already told you, this is Ethan's parents' apartment. He just stopped by to pick up some documents. Go down to the car. I'll catch up with you in a moment. Even a younger child would hardly have believed such a ridiculous explanation, but Sarah was incapable of anything more. When the girl slammed the entrance door, she turned to her husband with a question. Am I going with her alone? Are you staying to bury him? I guess that's what I'll have to do. I don't even know what to do about the fact that he was wanted. God forbid they'll arrest me for harboring a fugitive. Say that you came to check on the apartment and found him. I don't know what else to say. Try to tell less, Sarah. He left this morning. Ethan felt a lump rising in his throat. His loved ones were leaving, and he couldn't do anything about it. Perhaps there comes a moment in everyone's life when a series of losses begins, which is impossible to get used to. Hold on. You need to pull yourself together now, then you can let your feelings out. We're going to the station. Call when you can. Going downstairs, she found Chloe standing by the car. Can I ask something? Of course, my dear. Anything. Promise me you won't lie to me. I promise, Sarah blurted out before she had time to think. Why did we come here? Just tell me the truth. Sarah realized she couldn't come up with any more lies. Your real father lived in this apartment for the past few days. He lived here until this morning. He passed away. Please accept my condolences. We wanted to introduce you, but we didn't make it. For a few minutes, the girl was confused and couldn't say anything. Finally, she collected herself and said, I want to see him. I won't be scared. I need to see him at least once, to remember him. Sunshine, is it worth it? He's gone. Are your parents alive? Mom is, yes. Dad passed away a long time ago. Did you see him before he died? Of course. And I want to see him at least once. Okay, let's go to the apartment. They entered quietly. Ethan was already calling the ambulance and the police. He froze with the receiver in his hand, falling silent mid-sentence, looking at his wife questioningly. It has to be this way, she told him. Sarah took the girl's hand. Where is he? In the room. Not for long. The police will be here soon. You shouldn't be seen. I'll be quick. Don't worry. I'll just look. However, the girl's courage was only enough to cautiously step over the threshold and see the figure on the bed. With a shriek, she turned to Sarah and buried her face in her shoulder. The woman hugged the crying girl and quietly led her out of the room. Then she carefully led her to the car and helped her into the seat. They drove to the station in silence. The girl stopped crying but occasionally wiped away tears with the edge of her collar. Boarding the train didn't take long. Moreover, Sarah was glad that it was already late evening outside. Chloe lay down in her seat and soon fell asleep. But the woman couldn't sleep. Besides the heavy thoughts about their future, she was worried about her husband. He had to not only organize the funeral, but also try to prove his innocence in the fugitive criminal being in his parents' apartment. In the morning, the train arrived in the city that had become home to Sarah. She and her husband had lived here for a long time. Their children had grown up here. There was still a lot of time before the holidays, during which she had to inform the children about the new family member. Chloe woke up early but didn't wake Sarah, just lay there and silently looked out the window. Finally, she said, Sarah, do we still have a long way to go? No, less than half an hour. Sarah, why did you take me in? Who am I to you? Your father and my husband were friends since childhood. Leo asked us to look after you, and my husband didn't think of anything else but to take you under guardianship. After you turn 18, you will be completely independent and can decide how to live yourself. Sarah wanted to convey the meaning that the girl could make important decisions herself, but Chloe interpreted her words in her own way. So you just have to put up with me for 3 years, and that's it? I can go wherever I want? Go, dear. You didn't understand. I only meant that you will become independent, self-sufficient, and we will always try to support you. You can count on us, but you can live as you wish. But until then, you'll put up with me and then kick me out the door. As far as I understand, you're not at all thrilled about the idea of taking in God knows who. God knows who born. I saw my father. Mom said he was only 3 years older. And that old man I saw yesterday? Who is he? My real father or an old man who somehow ended up in your husband's apartment? What's wrong with him? Was he homeless? Was he in prison? What? The woman was struck by the change that had come over the girl overnight. Just yesterday she was quiet and withdrawn, but today she had become quite sharp, rude. Chloe, I'm not sure I'm the one who should tell you all this. Just a couple of days ago, I knew nothing about your father or you, just like you. I even thought my husband had a mistress in his hometown, and then I saw him buying clothes for you and decided you were his daughter. I bought a train ticket and followed him, and there I met him and your father, and they explained everything to me. To be honest, I was shocked, but I understand my husband. He couldn't have acted otherwise. And that means we all have to accept this fact and learn to live together. Whether to conflict or learn to cooperate is your decision. You are an adult. We will provide you with a proper quality of life, but how our communication will be depends only on you. It seemed that such a direct answer somewhat calmed the girl's rising anger, especially since Sarah had been warned that such a reaction was normal. Perhaps it would be easier for the girl to cope with the pain of losing her loved ones this way. And Sarah, as an adult, had to support her. It was amazing how quickly a complete stranger could become close. Just yesterday, Sarah had absolutely no desire to take a strange child into her family, and today she felt so sorry for the girl that she couldn't leave her alone without support in this difficult world. The woman gently took the girl's hand and said, "I know you're angry at everyone, including us, for how cruelly fate has treated you. If you need to, be angry, vent your emotions, but don't cultivate hatred towards us. We sincerely want to help you. As soon as you reach the age of majority, you can claim your parents' property rights and move out. Until then, we all need to learn to live together peacefully. And you won't abandon me?" The girl's voice trembled. It seemed she was about to burst into tears. "No, we won't abandon you, if it depends only on us. Your parents didn't abandon you either. They left against their will. Tell me about my father, please." "My dear, I can't. I know almost nothing about him. I can only say he was very ill. That's why he looked like that. Ethan can tell you more. They were friends from childhood. I remember he told me how your father saved his life." "Really? How? Tell me." "We've arrived. Let me tell you this story at home. And tomorrow we'll go enroll you in school number 10. I never thought I'd go back there. Did your children study there?" "Yes. And it's a good school, with strong, experienced teachers. My children got into the universities they chose even without tutors. And I had a good school too, but Grandpa and Grandma still hired a bunch of tutors for me. They cared about you. They wanted you to have a wealth of knowledge from childhood and not turn out like your father. I once overheard their conversation. He said he would pay any money for tutors, send me to any schools and clubs, just so my father's genes wouldn't show themselves. And yet he only wanted the best for you. It's just that sometimes adults, wanting to do something good, go a little overboard, not considering the child's wishes." They didn't get home until noon. Sarah called her deputy, warning her that she would be away for a couple of days. She took a day off. Her deputy was surprised but didn't ask questions. In all their time working together, Sarah had only taken sudden days off a couple of times. She loved her job very much and dedicated a lot of time to it. And Sarah decided to spend this day with Chloe to help her adapt a little. Ethan didn't call. This was starting to worry her. She was afraid to call herself, afraid to hear something bad. In the evening, she decided to call the children and inform them that a new member had joined the family. She called her son Adam first. For some reason, it was always easier for her to reach an agreement with men. Her son's first reaction was unexpected. "Mom, are you sure this is a good idea? An adult girl with such psychological trauma? What could come of this? You and Dad were never known for harshness or strictness in upbringing. The fact that Emily and I grew up this way is only because of your example. But we grew up with you, and this girl didn't. She was raised strictly. What will happen when she feels that you won't be so strict? 15 is the most difficult age, even when everything in life is calm. And she has lost her entire family." Her son seemed to voice all her hidden fears. She herself understood everything her son was telling her. She understood and was afraid. So she decided to be a little stricter with Chloe at first, so she wouldn't take advantage. Emily, her daughter, supported her brother's concerns. She was more lively and spirited of the two, even sometimes defending her brother. But here, she completely agreed with him. The girl needed to be accustomed to freedom gradually, otherwise she would harm herself. Sarah was struck by the fact that the children didn't oppose their parents' decision, didn't ask unnecessary questions. Apparently, they had long been accustomed to the fact that their parents made only well-considered and deliberate decisions. Besides, Mom said it was Dad's decision, which meant arguing was useless. In the evening, Ethan called. His voice sounded very tired. After he and Chloe left, he waited for the ambulance and the police, reporting that he had found an unknown man in the apartment. The death was natural, so the police didn't show much interest in the discovery. However, after lunch, the investigator called and invited him to come in. Imagine, he invited me. Apparently, professional ethics have reached our valiant police force. Anyway, I was informed that the deceased was Leo. He had escaped from prison. He came to the apartment apparently because he had nowhere else to go. So, I took on the funeral arrangements. No one was surprised, especially since I said we were friends in childhood. I'm leaving tomorrow afternoon. The police have no questions for me, no reason for an investigation, and no cause to create problems for me. Thank God! I was so worried. How are things with you? Adam called me, shared his concerns. I called both of them. They accepted our decision unexpectedly easily, but both said to be stricter with the girl at first. I agree with them, although it's not our method, yours and mine. However, Sarah couldn't follow the advice. In the evening, Chloe asked to go for a walk. Sarah offered to accompany her, but she flatly refused, saying she was already an adult and was only going for a short walk nearby. I won't go far enough from the house to get lost. You have my phone number. I memorized your address. Okay, but try to be back by 7 in the evening. I know it's early, but you don't know the city. Besides, it's not the safest neighborhood. Even though you're quite grown up, you look like a little girl. When I first saw you, I thought you were no older than 12. Be careful. Or would you like me to walk with you? No, I want to be alone for a bit. All right, but try to keep your phone turned on. The girl nodded and left the apartment. After 7 in the evening, Sarah decided to call herself. Chloe's phone was turned off. After half an hour of fruitless calls, the woman decided to go look for the girl. It was already starting to get dark outside. The few passers-by hurried home, wrapping their collars against the biting wind. After circling the house, all the nearby squares and courtyards, Sarah decided to call her husband. He should have been boarding the train home by then. Ethan, what happened? Chloe is missing. She asked to walk around the neighborhood. We agreed she'd be back by 7 and her phone would be on. Now it's 8:30 and her phone is off. Should I go to the police? They won't even take a statement from you. I think this is her way of testing the boundaries. This is exactly what we were talking about. We can't let her walk all over us, otherwise we won't cope. I'll be there in the morning, and we'll find her together if she doesn't come back sooner. However, even in the morning after Ethan's arrival, there was no news from Chloe. It was decided to go to the police, as the girl didn't know the city and could be in trouble. Ethan asked Sarah to wait for him outside, and he went in to talk to the investigator. Listen, could you give me the addresses of places where young people gather in our city? But you said the girl was quiet and modest? The girl was just taken from the Sunny Ray orphanage yesterday, and before that, she grew up under total strictness. Understood. I'll look. There are quite a few such places here, to be honest. It would be good if she didn't end up there. Our local rascals quickly turn such sheltered girls into homeless ones. Try to keep a better eye on the child. After receiving a printout of addresses, Ethan and his wife decided to start looking for Chloe themselves. After driving to several addresses, they realized how incredibly lucky they were with their own children. Not once had their children made them worry so much. Both had grown up active but not reckless, of course. Like all teenagers, they got into various situations, but their parents never had to look for them in such places or go to the police. Ethan expected his wife to say that he had started all this and dragged her into it, but Sarah, as in many other situations, was supportive and tried to help. They had taken this responsibility together. Blaming her husband was pointless. In one of the courtyards, on a bench, they found Chloe sleeping. It took some effort to wake her up. To their surprise, she didn't smell of alcohol. As she later explained herself, she had simply decided to walk and had wandered around the city for almost a day until she fell asleep from exhaustion on the nearest bench. She turned off her phone on purpose. She wanted to be alone and think. "Didn't you think we'd worry?" "I did. I'm not going to apologize." With these words, she turned away to the window and remained silent all the way home. At home, Ethan decided to talk to her himself. "Chloe, Sarah said you were asking about your father. Well, listen. I've never seen a more honest and just person, ready to go through fire and water for a friend. He was ready to go without food for days just to bring something tasty back for his sisters. He pulled me out of icy water, even though he could have died himself, as he was half my size. He had a hard life, got in with bad company, went to prison. Yes, your father was a criminal, but he knew how to admit his mistakes. In that, you are definitely not like him. I don't see his honesty in you, his openness, his gratitude for kindness, nothing of what I valued and loved him for so much. If you want to live with us, you must live by our rules. Call so we don't worry, keep your promises, obey, be respectful. I understand that you're not thrilled about the idea of living with strangers. If it's that difficult for you, I'll take you back to the Sunny Ray Orphanage. Just 3 years and you'll be free. Go wherever you want, you'll be your own boss. But if you want to have a family, loved ones, support, and love, learn to adapt. We didn't force our children to be obedient. They learned from our example. Adam and Emily are not against you living with us. Sarah and I are ready to give you our attention, our care. But if you're going to leave whenever you feel like it, not answer calls, and then not apologize, don't unpack your things, we're going back. I'll give you an hour. Think about it. I'm not rushing you. I'm not persuading you. But you either accept our terms or you don't. With these words, he left and closed the door behind him, not giving the girl a chance to say a word. The hour they gave her to think felt agonizingly long. They could hear her walking around the room, opening and closing her suitcase several times, moving a chair. Sarah and Ethan sat silently in the kitchen and exchanged glances at every sound coming from the room. Finally, Sarah said, "Are you sure this is the right way? It's time for her to learn to make decisions." Before, adults did it for her, but sometimes she has to grow up. Some people take many years, while others grow up in a couple of weeks. Her father, as I saw it, wasn't a child from childhood. He carried responsibility for his sisters. What happened to him during the years we didn't see him, I won't judge, but I remember him being mature beyond his years. By the way, I found out what happened to his parents and sisters. When the children were taken away, the parents, in their joy, went on a long drinking binge, froze the house's heating system, and froze to death. I was about 12 then. The adults didn't tell us, and they didn't tell Leo the truth when he ran away from the orphanage. They lied that the parents had moved. And the sisters? And the sisters repeated their parents' fate. After the orphanage, they found partners like themselves. Leo casually mentioned that their lives didn't work out. In short, both are alive but lead a lifestyle that is, to put it mildly, dishonest. Both have children in the orphanage. So Leo has at least 3 cousins. How did you find that out? The neighbor told me. She recognized me when I was explaining to the police how Leo could have ended up in my parents' apartment. She's a cunning old woman, by the way. She immediately understood I was lying to them. She saw me arrive with him and carry groceries, but she didn't turn us in. She told me everything. By the way, they all live nearby here. We'll see what Chloe decides. Maybe we'll tell her about her relatives. You don't have to. I heard everything. It turned out Chloe had been standing behind the door for a long time and had heard the whole conversation. I don't want to live like my father's family. I'm ready to follow all your conditions, especially since yours are even softer than Grandpa's were. Only Mom used to spoil me before. Forgive me. I don't know what came over me. You don't owe me anything at all and could have left me at the Sunny Ray Orphanage. 5 years passed. Chloe graduated from school number 10 with honors and entered the Pedagogical Institute, Faculty of Social Sciences. She wanted to help children like her father was, to help and protect them from the conditions they ended up in, to give them a chance to become normal people. She kept the promise she made to Ethan and Sarah. There wasn't a single problem with her. She studied, tried hard, obeyed, didn't contradict. Gradually, she became like family to them. The older children also accepted the girl quite warmly. Emily became friends with her younger sister, often helped her choose outfits, and the girls went on vacation together several times. Adam didn't accept the girl for a long time, treated her warily, expecting trouble. However, gradually, he too warmed up. The fact that he got married while still studying and had a son contributed greatly to this. Adam, you've become a wimp, his sister often told him, teasing her brother without malice, who could talk for hours about what his child could do. You just haven't been in my shoes. When you have your own, you'll become just as much of a wimp, I assure you. Oh no, I don't want to be stuck with diapers and bottles from a young age. My career and travel come first. But if I want a little child to smear porridge on me, I'll gladly use my nephew. In reality, the girl adored the baby and spared neither money nor time for his whims. In all the years, Ethan and Sarah never regretted taking Chloe into their family. After the children finished school and moved out, the house seemed empty and quiet. Even though both had jobs they loved, the need to care for someone, to look after them, was felt very acutely. By the time Chloe finished school and moved out, a grandson had appeared in their son Adam's family, whom the happy grandparents often took in, giving the young parents a little respite. They remembered how difficult it had been for them without parental help with twins during their student years. Chloe couldn't find the strength to meet her father's relatives for several years. Neither of his sisters showed any interest in her, but their children were very happy to have normal relatives besides their parents. Chloe tried to visit them more often, give small gifts, tell them about herself, her life. She often remembered her first day in their family. Then she was given a choice: a calm life in a family with trust, mutual respect, consideration of interests, love, understanding, or the Sunny Ray Orphanage. In the couple of weeks she spent in that institution, she understood that she needed to strive to leave there, not return. She chose the family and never regretted it. Despite growing up in a family with a different way of life, she was able to adopt the family values that Ethan and Sarah instilled in their children. When she met a wonderful young man a few years later and decided to marry him, she first brought him to her parents so that they, from the height of their life experience, could assess what kind of person he was. Both Sarah and Ethan liked the young man. Gradually, life returned to its usual course, becoming quiet and peaceful.